Hello, we have Cookies56 here, and this is my second Minecraft Forge modding tutorial. And in this video we're going to be setting up the main mod file, so then we have it prepared to then add other things to the mod that are a lot more interesting. So sorry that this is basically not going to be a very interesting video, because we're just setting up the kind of foundations to actually make a mod, so there's not going to be anything added, but it is required, so we'll have to do it. So as you can see, Forge comes with the example mod, and this is actually quite helpful because it saves us a bit of time. So I'm actually gonna the first thing I'm going to do is create a new package for our mod, and the way packages are named usually is by using your domain backwards. So for me that is uk.co.wefcookies. Oh my god, I can't type right now. We have cookies56, so my domain is wehavecookies56.co.uk, so then I put uk.co. And then after that we put the name of the mod, so I'm just going to call it tutorial mod. If you don't have a domain, either make it up, just use like what you use as your username and then put like com dot or whatever, or you can just put your username. I used to just use my username, then the name of the mod, but now I use this. So, and then what I'm going to do is move the example mod class into that package, and it will delete the other package, which is kind of convenient. And now I'm going to just put the brackets in the style I prefer. So, a couple of things to explain before we actually start changing things is this @mod annotation is the kind of marker that tells Forge mod loader that this is a mod, so it needs to load it. So when it starts a game, it searches for mods and it will find this and say, oh look, it's a mod, and then it will load things. So that's what this is for. And we just need to specify the mod ID and the version. Another thing that's helpful is adding a name, so we will do that. But first, let's just rename this. So go to refactor, rename, and I will just call this tutorial mod. So usually class names have capital letters, but packages you should always just have lowercase, and you don't want spaces either. I don't even think it will let you create ones with spaces, but it might, so I'm not entirely sure actually. That doesn't matter. So I'm going to add a new variable here, and it's just going to be the name, and it's going to be tutorial mod, and then I'm going to change the mod ID. So the mod ID is the unique ID of your mod. So when you're loading a bunch of mods, they will have their own mod IDs, and let's say you had a previous version of your mod in the mods folder, and then you put in a new version but you didn't get rid of the old version. Forge would see that there's two of the same mod ID, and it would say, oh look, you have a duplicate, and it won't let you load. So it's a good idea to make it either name your mod something unique, or make the mod ID something like your username and then the name of the mod. It depends on how generic the name of your mod is, really. But mine's just going to be tutorial mod. Also make sure it's got no spaces and it's all lowercase. In 1.11, Forge will actually enforce this. If you do put it in uppercase, you'll get a big warning in the console. So yeah, it's a good idea to have it lowercase, because an uppercase mod ID is actually detected as a separate thing. And if you had two mods with, well, in some cases though it isn't, so that's why you should just make it lowercase. Anyway, so I'm going to add the name to here, so it's just going to be tutorialmod.name. And then in here we have the initialization, the FML initialization event, the init. We're going to add 2 more of these, but basically the initialization events are three methods that are called during the initialization process of Forge. So there's the pre-initialization, which happens first and is the earliest stage of initialization. Then we got the initialization, which is the end part of actually loading Forge. And then once the game's actually loaded, there is the post-initialization for stuff that you want to register during the game, while the game is running, when everything else has been loaded. Most of the time we'll use the pre-initialization, and sometimes we use the initialization. So the post-initialization is rarely used, but you might as well just have it there just in case you need to use it. So I'm going to add the pre-init here, so make sure it has the @event handler. Luckily the example mod has this already here, so it's you won't forget that. And then we just want FML initialization event, and I'm going to put the post-initialization. Sorry, I'm being terrible at speaking right now. I'm going to put the post underneath the initialization, or the init, just to be in like the order. So it goes pre-init, init, and then post-init. So that's less confusing because it's in the order that they happen. Of course, you don't have to put them in this order. They will still load in the same order, but it's better to have it visually be in the right order. So right now these won't do anything because we haven't put anything in here, but basically this is where you will initialize everything in your mod. So, well, apart from client side stuff, because these will be called on both the server side and the client side. So let's say you were registering some textures. If you did this in here, then on the server it will try to register the textures, but obviously on the server you don't render anything, so it will crash, which we don't want. So this is why we need proxies, which we will now create. So we're going to need a common proxy and a client proxy, and I'm going to put these in a new package, so I'm going to call it proxy. So this is going to be organized, and we're going to have common proxy. And then in here, we're going to have 3 methods, very similar to the main mod file. We're going to have, we'll do pre-init first, and I'm even going to have the pre-initialization event in here as a parameter. This isn't necessarily required, and you may find that you never actually use it, but it could be useful. It's not necessary to put it in there, but it can be helpful. So as you can use in your proxy this sort of stuff, you may not need to, but the get mod configuration directory is probably one of the more useful ones in there, but that's fine. So let's just do the post init. Luckily, or hopefully, IntelliJ comes up with suggestions and imports this stuff for you, so it's a lot less effort. So we're not actually going to put anything in these, and we're going to create the client proxy. And the client proxy, by the way, that asks if you want it to add to Git. You can if you want, and then you won't have to do the Git add here. But it doesn't. I'm just going to do it when I actually push stuff here. So this is going to extend the common proxy. and we're going to override the methods from the common proxy, so you just need to press Control O and that will come up with methods to override. If you just hold down Shift and click there, it will select all three of these because we want to override all of them, and we're going to get rid of all the supers. And there we go, our client proxy and our common proxy have been created. That's all we need to do currently for those. As I say, this is structuring it, so we don't actually have anything to put in there right now, but in the next few tutorials we will actually be using them. So to actually tell Forge basically that they are proxies, we need to do @sided proxy, and then in the brackets we have client side and server side. So I'm going to leave these blank for just a second, but what we want is our common proxy variable, so this is just going to be called proxy, and then we're going to import. So if you press Alt Enter, it will import, and we're going to copy this. So this is the import path basically to the common proxy, and in the server side we will have common proxy, so this needs to be exactly the name of it. So if you do rename your proxy, let's say you rename this to proxy common for some reason, then make sure you have changed this. IntelliJ may actually change this for you when you rename it, but you better be sure, otherwise it's still going to look for common proxy even though you've renamed it, so be careful about that. And then client proxy is going to be the same since we have it in the same package, but instead we're going to put client proxy. Also, it is case sensitive, so if you did call this like client proxy with a lowercase p, then make sure to put a lowercase p and an uppercase c there, so otherwise it won't work. So now we've got our proxy, we just need to call the methods. So we have the pre-init in here, and then we have the init in here, and we just need to pass the event parameter, so it's the same type. And there we go, so that's all three of those. And then we're just going to do one more thing. We're going to make the instance of the mod, so it will just put that mod dot in there for you. And then we're going to do public static, and then the name of our mod class. So this is going to be a instance of our mod. We don't actually need this right now, and it's not used that often, but for GUIs and entities, those are the two things I can think of off the top of my head. They do actually need an instance of the mod, and there may be other times you need it. So it's good to have, just a quick thing, super simple, that's all you have to do. So yeah. Now IntelliJ will say that these are never used. That's because Forge calls these methods in a different way. We don't actually want to call these methods ourselves. Forge does it, so don't worry about that. In other places though, you'll see that like it will say these before said they're never used, but now that we've extended them and we've extended common proxy and overridden them, they are used, and the fact that we are now calling them in here. So IntelliJ is pretty helpful with that. We can actually get rid of this import here. And before we end, I'm going to add this because I don't want to do this in the next tutorial, so I'm going to do this now. We're going to add a new creative tab ready for when we do items and blocks, so we have somewhere to put them that isn't a default tab. So making a creative tab is pretty simple. We'll make a new class, and I mean we could put them in a new package. I'll just call it tab, although you may not need, it may only just end up being one tab unless you want to add more tabs. So I'm just going to call this creative tab tutorial, and this is going to extend creative tabs. There it is. And then we just need to add a constructor, so we can actually press Alt Insert, and then just press enter on constructor, and we will use this because then we can set the ID and the name of it. So then we just want to override the fact. Let's do Control I, and this is the required thing we want to override. So the get tab icon item is a method that just basically we just need to return an item to display as the icon for the tab. So when you go in creative, all the tabs have their own icons. Like the miscellaneous tab, I think, has a lava bucket. So we just need to set this. Right now we don't have a mod item, so we can't set that. So what I'll do is just use a vanilla item. So we just need to do items dot, and then all the items are in here from Minecraft. So let's say we want, I don't know, we could have anything here. Let's just go emerald. Why not? We can change this to a custom item later. And then after that, we just need to actually make an instance of our creative tab. So what I'll go to is our main mod file, and then we're going to do public static creative tab tutorial, and then I'll just call it tab tutorial. It actually gives you suggestions, which is kind of helpful. And then in the pre-init, we're going to say tab tutorial equals new creative tab tutorial, and then we need to put in the parameters. So the ID, we can actually do creative tabs.get next ID, so there are no ID conflicts with creative tabs. It will just automatically get the ID for us. So if there are other mods that add creative tabs, they'll all have their own unique ID. So we don't have to handle that ourselves, which is definitely super helpful. And then I will just say tab tutorial. In fact, I'll put tab underscore tutorial all in lowercase. And after that, we can run the game. So just a quick note, another way to find out if Forge has an update is just by launching Minecraft. It will say a new Forge version available, and there'll be this icon, and you can see that it needs an update. So let's actually have a world here. I'll make a new one, it's fine. Now there is one thing I didn't change, which we'll change in just a moment. So I am in my world, and we can see we have a new page for the tabs, and we have item group dot tab underscore tutorial. So right now that's a terrible name. We don't, this is building blocks, not item group dot building underscore blocks or whatever. So we need to localize this name. So we're going to just make a language file. So we will be making that very soon. But as you can see, we have the emerald icon here, and there is nothing in here right now. But we will be adding stuff to this in the next tutorials. So that is fine for now. Now, the next thing we need to change, as well as the language file, is we need to change the mcmod.info, which is found in the resources folder. And this basically gives us information about the mod. So the reason it says no mod information found is because this says the mod ID is example mod, so there isn't one for the tutorial mod, so this doesn't work. But basically we can provide information about the mod. So you can see that Forge has the link to Forge here, and the authors, the credits, the mod ID, the version, and the name, and it even has like a description here, and there's an update link. And the same thing for Forge mod loader and MCP. MCP even has a logo, which we can specify, but I won't be doing that. So let's quit the game. So the MC mod info here in the example mod is pretty handy since we don't have to make this ourselves. It has everything here we need. So these two here, first of all, we don't need to change. These will automatically be filled when we build the mods. So when you release your mod or run it in a non-development environment, these will have the correct versions. So that is super handy. But the other stuff we do need to change. So tutorial mod. So this needs to be exactly the same as your mod ID. If it's wrong, then it won't work. Same with the name. And then the description, we can put anything we like. So a tutorial mod. And then the URL, we can specify this update URL. We do not specify. There is actually a different way. The way Forge does it, I will be showing in a future tutorial. And this actually does not do anything, so don't bother with it. But this will, if you want to specify your website, or just like if you've put it on CurseForge or Minecraft forums, put the link there, or wherever you put it. So author list, I'm just going to put my username here, so we have cookies56. If you've made this mod with another person, then you can put a comma, and then in speech marks put another person's name, and you can have as many as you want because it's an array. And then we have the credits here, so I'm just going to say the Forge and FML guys for making Forge and FML. A logo file, so you just specify the name of your logo, so you want to put that in the main folder here of your mod, and you'll get it, and it will find it. So, and this should be a URL that you have, so if it's on your GitHub repository, you can get the link from there. And screenshots, same sort of thing. And dependencies are the mod IDs of the mods. Like if you require a mod to be loaded, so for example, if you have some sort of either you've made an add-on for another mod, then make sure you add the ID of the mod that it's an add-on for. Otherwise, you could end up, there could be someone trying to load the mod without it, and it would just get a horrible crash. But if you have the dependency here and someone loads the mod without the dependency, it will say you are missing this, like it will come up. You may have experienced that before when using Forge and installing a mod if you didn't realize it needed something. So yeah, so that's very handy for compatibility and is much more user friendly than just a horrible crash that people may not be able to read. So the resources folder is very important, and right now is very empty. So we're going to add a couple of folders here. So the first folder we need to make is assets. Just call it assets like that. Don't call it anything else. It needs to be called assets. Then your mod ID, so tutorial mod for me. Then we're going to make a couple of things, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to untick compact empty middle packages, so we have them set out like this. And then I'm going to make a new directory, and we're going to have lang. So for the language files, make sure you call it lang. We're going to have textures, although most of these are going to be empty. And then we're going to have models, and we're going to have block states. So these are just going to be here. This is these are a bunch of folders that we'll need, and while we're at it, we'll make some more inside some of these. So items, and then blocks, and then in models we want item, not items. Make sure it is just item, and the same with block. It's just block. And then in here we're going to make our language file. So make a new file. And this will be the language code for, so if you are translating the mod into another language, let's say, I don't know, French, then it will be FR_FR in capitals. Spanish would be ES_ES. Japanese, JA_JP, but we're going to be doing English US. So we're going to do EN_US, then it's a .lang file. We could also do EN_GB if we wanted to do British English, but the default language is en_US as well, so it's good to have the US language file at least. And then we just want to put the name of our thing, so it's going to be item group dot tab underscore tutorial, so it has to be the exact thing. So when we were in game, we saw that it said item group dot tab underscore tutorial equals, and then we're going to say tutorial mod. I'm just going to call it tutorial mod, so that is the name of the tab. So after the equals, make sure there's no spaces here, and anything after this equals will be the translated name, as long as it's on the same line. When you go on to the next line, then it's a new thing to translate. We also can put comments in here, so just use a hash, and we can say English US language file for tutorial mod, or whatever you want to put here. You can put as many as you want, so we could say creative tab here, so we know that that's for the creative tab. And let's say we have items, and we could put items and then any items we want to translate, but we don't have any right now, so that's our language file. And let's say you want to, just as an example, let's say you want to translate the mod into another language, so I'll do ENGB. This will be exactly the same, since there's very little differences, but that's fine. What I'm going to do is copy and paste this file, and then let's say in ENGB tutorial mod is mod tutorial or something, then it will show mod tutorial when the language is set to ENGB or British English. It will show mod tutorial rather than tutorial mod. Doesn't really matter when it comes to these two languages, but if you do speak another language, or there's someone else who wants to translate your mod, then they can make a new file and they'll be able to translate it. So the US language file is usually used as like a template for people to then translate, because they have all the names of the things that they need to translate here already for them. So that is actually everything that I'll be doing in this tutorial. So thank you for watching, and the next tutorial will be doing items, and then after that we'll be doing blocks. And I'm not going to just do like a simple item, we're going to go into more. We're going to do a couple of extra things with items, so you can make some interesting things. So thanks for watching. If this video helped you, then give it a like, and if you want to see more, subscribe. And if you want to support me, go to patreon.com/wehavecookies56.